Hello everybody, this is a tutorial about the circular flow. Circular flow is a concept to really bridge the gap between Unit 1 and Unit 2. In Unit 1, we learned a lot about productive resources, which are land, labor, and capital. We learned about people purchasing goods according to the law of demand, businesses supplying those goods according to the law of supply. And then also the concept of the fact that businesses and households make decisions based upon what would give them the most utility. So we're going to use a good Tropicana orange juice to help illustrate this concept. Tropicana orange juice is a good that many of you probably are familiar with. And also it's a good that has what I would call a clear-cut natural resource. So that's something that I think is really also important as well. And keep that in mind when you are approaching the circular flow on your own, that you choose something that has a resource that makes a lot of sense to you about where it came from. Okay, so the circular flow. We're going to transition over to my document camera here, and I'd like to give you a moment to pause your video to draw on a piece of paper something that looks like this. You want to have a piece of paper where you can really fill it up. Don't be shy. You want to make a big diagram, and also you probably want to turn your paper on its side the long way so you have plenty of space. All right, so now that you have your circular flow diagram, what I like to do is I like to put the good that's the subject of the circular flow diagram in the middle of the diagram, just to give it a little bit of personality and a little bit of life. Okay, so this is my glass of orange juice. Okay, I'm gonna put it in the spotlight here. So where would somebody get a glass of orange juice? Well, they got to buy it first. And where does somebody buy orange juice? You got a lot of options. You could get it at Shaw's. You could get it at Stop and Shop. You could get it at Rite Aid. We're going to call any of those places where we could purchase the orange juice the product market. And hopefully that makes sense because again, you're buying a product. So where do you buy the product? You buy it at a place that sells those items. So I'm going to choose something that's right here in Barrington, which is Shaw's. And Shaw's is a possessive word there. It's named after the family Shaw. It belonged to them. So it was Shaw's. Who is going to purchase this orange juice? Well, we're going to pretend it's us. So we're just going to put the household over here. And this is the technical name for the household, but we are the people that are buying it. So I'm going to say my house right here. Okay. So in order to purchase that orange juice, hopefully legally, that orange juice made its way to my house because I provided Shaw's with a payment. Okay, so I'm going to put money here. Actually, you know what? I'm going to cross that out because I won't have enough room. And this green marker is kind of big, so I mean very light. So I'm going to use the black to write the word payment. That's money that's moving. So I'm using green for money to show that change. All right, so again, in order to get the orange juice, I went to a place like Shaw's. I supplied Shaw's with a payment. I was able to take the orange juice home. Okay, let's go back to the left over here. Where does Shaw's get the orange juice from? So somehow or another, orange juice made its way to Shaw's on big pallets, you know, these big, giant boxes on pallets. There was a truck that showed up. It might have even said Tropicana on the side of it. Well, in order for Shaw's to have the Tropicana in its stores, presumably they also made a payment to someone. So who are you thinking of that they made a payment to? They probably made a payment to a business. Oops, business doesn't start with the word S. And that was the bell that rang, and we might hear some hallway noise in a second here, so just forgive me. So yeah, so that's a business, and the business is the Tropicana Company. I'm not sure exactly where it's headquartered, but I believe Tropicana is based out of Florida. So I would assume that the Tropicana headquarters, and I'm going to abbreviate headquarters with these 6 letters there. The Tropicana headquarters is where somebody is in charge of the marketing of the orange juice, which farms or orchards they're going to get the oranges from. They're probably got some processing plants and some factories where they're juicing the oranges and then turning them into the product, bottling them, packaging them, and putting them in trucks, sending them to Barrington, Rhode Island. The top of the circular flow diagram is the part of the diagram that is a little bit more simplified than real life, okay? And I'll explain that in a second. But in order to turn oranges into orange juice here at these factories, this headquarters in Florida, they need to have oranges, all right? So it's not OJ here, it's the actual oranges. And where are those oranges coming from? Well, oranges are a factor of production or a productive resource. So often this is referred to as the resource market. Sometimes there are resources out there that call this also, I'm going to write a little note up here. Sometimes this is referred to as the factor market. All right, so be comfortable with both names. You have a textbook that's going to refer to this as the resource market. There might be some other textbooks out there that call it the factor market. You could see either of these mentioned on an AP exam, so just be prepared for that. The resource market in this case is going to be, I don't think it's an orchard. I think it's a grove, actually, an orange grove. That's somewhere, I'm running out of room, somewhere in Florida. And in order for them to send those oranges to the Tropicana headquarters to turn them into juice, I presume that Tropicana had to pay that orange grove, the farmer, the owners of it, some sort of payment, right? Those oranges aren't for free. And then lastly, where do we go from the resource market? And this is the part of the diagram that, again, is a little bit more simplified, but I'm going to break that down for you in a moment. In order for the resource market to function, people have to be working at it. So in order for the oranges to be planted, for the trees to be planted, to be cared for, to have irrigation, to have fertilizer, to have the oranges picked off of the trees and the bad ones thrown out and the good ones kept and put into a big wooden pallet and sent to the Tropicana factory to be made into juice, there has to be some sort of labor there. So in this circular flow diagram, we're going to put an orange arrow over here, but it's not oranges or orange juice, it's labor. Okay, so somebody's household is providing labor to that orange grove. And in return for that labor, that household is receiving not a payment. I mean, I guess it's a payment, but we really refer to this as income. So somebody's receiving income for that labor, and also there could be a household that's supplying labor to, let's say, an engineering company that's making this new irrigation system that they can wheel over the tops of the trees and water them on days when there isn't a rainfall. So labor can sort of manifest itself in many different ways. It could be labor that's actually at the grove picking the oranges. It could be labor that somebody is putting into creating a capital good, or even another natural resource that's necessary to make the orange juice. Now, you might be looking at this diagram and thinking to yourself, well, I don't work at the orange grove, so this doesn't make sense for me. And you're right, and that's what I meant about it being a little bit simplified. So in this case, what we're thinking about here is your household is supplying labor somehow in this economy, and it is getting income, and then you're purchasing many different goods. Your household doesn't only purchase orange juice. That's just one of the thousands of things that your household consumes, whether it's a good or a service. We can't put all of those on this drawing, as we can't put all of the different ways that households are receiving income on one drawing. But what we can assume somewhere in the world, and this is what I like to imagine, I like to imagine that somewhere in the world there is a person going into their refrigerator right now, and they're taking out the Tropicana orange juice and they're pouring it into a glass and they're enjoying it, and they work at the Orange Grove. That person is the perfect circular flow diagram. And I think about how the days when I was in my 20s and I worked at a part-time job, I worked at Bath and Body Works. And I had so many products from Bath and Body Works in my home. I still do, by the way. I still have things that I bought over 10 years ago that is sitting in a closet that I can just use anytime. And that was the perfect circular flow diagram too, because here I was supplying labor to Bath and Body Works, and then they were using that money and they were turning it into products that I myself was purchasing as a consumer. So the circular flow diagram is a way that we can organize the movement, and you can see it on the chart right now, the movement of goods going through an economy, right? And then we see that in return for those goods, we have to supply some money. And the economy is all about that movement. And if the movement isn't happening, then the economy is not going to be healthy. We're not going to have a gross domestic product that's showing growth, and we might even be experiencing some unemployment. So if you think about right now in the United States, where are we at? Where is the money flowing? Are people out of work or are people working? And this video might be used at a time other than right now, so I'm not going to use an exact scenario, but I can envision right now what might be happening with the circular flow diagram based on current events. The other element of this circular flow diagram, and I don't want to freak you out, but I'm just going to show it to you. You don't have to write it down. I want to see if there's a way to, yeah, I'm going to erase those lines so you don't have them anymore. I'm going to just draw something on here. And like I said, don't freak out. You don't have to do it. In the future, there's two other elements that are involved in the circular flow of money and resources and goods in the economy. And those two entities are banks and government. Because if you think about it, we're paying taxes, and then the government is also supplying goods and services, and that is sort of money flowing back and forth between households and the government. Same thing with businesses. Businesses have to pay taxes, and then businesses receive services from the government and also goods. So there's movement there. Banks are also really important in this too, because households receive money from banks in the form of taking out loans, and so do businesses. And then businesses and households both put money into banks for savings and investment purposes. So all of those things are in here too. But you haven't learned about the banking industry yet, and you haven't learned about the government with fiscal policy, which is taxing and spending. So that's why in Unit 2, you don't need to worry about it yet. But it's coming, it's down the road, it's something in your future. But for right now, think about that nice, refreshing glass of orange juice and how now you can try the circular flow on your own. It's awesome.